Insidious, The Last Key stars Lin Shaye and is directed by Adam Robital and is the fourth installment in the Insidious franchise. And it's also the first film of 2018 and the first film of January. Shit. Yes, it's true, January is normally known as a shit pile for movies. But, to be fair, every once in a while, you do get a gold nugget in a pile of shit. I don't know why you'd be digging in shit for gold nuggets, but whatever floats your boat. Insidious, The Last Key takes place after the events of the third film, but is still a prequel to the first two films. Hey, you know what? It's still less confusing than the Fast and the Furious franchise. This time, the character Elise, played by Lin Shaye, is called back to her childhood home, where as a child she was terrorized by both her abusive father and a demon in the basement. Now the man who lives in her old home is being terrorized as well, so she must return to confront the demons of her past. Now, overall, I have enjoyed all of the Insidious films to some degree or another. The first one is obviously a really good, solid horror movie. It actually still holds up as a scary film. The acting, the characters in it are incredible. While yes, it's true, it is essentially a remake of Poltergeist from 1982. But that being said, it's still a solid haunted house movie. It's a throwback to all those old ones. I kind of look at it almost like it's James Wan's blueprint for The Conjuring, which obviously he also directed 2 years later. I think that is a much better film. It almost feels like this is his practice run before he went and made that. But that being said, I still enjoy the first Insidious. Maybe I'll have to review it sometimes because I got a lot to say about that one, especially after just rewatching it recently before this. But I gotta move on. Insidious 2. I've only seen Insidious 2 and the third one once each in theaters. Actually, that's not true. I didn't see the second one in theaters. I lied. But I did see it the same year when it came out on Blu-ray. Anyway, the point is I only saw each of them once. And Insidious 2 is fine. It's okay. It has enough goodwill for the first one. I liked it for the most part. But it's not, amazing. It has a lot of problems. But I would barely give it a pass, I guess, at least from memory. Maybe if I rewatch it again, I won't, but from memory, at least I would say that. Insidious 3, however, I think surprisingly works overall. I think, again, it does have problems, like all of them do, but they're less pronounced in Insidious 3, at least from memory. And I remember finding it kind of creepy, and I found it pretty effective for the most part. Now, that leads me into this new film, where, of course, we have the continuation of Alicia's story, played by Lin Shaye, and I gotta say, it's really cool and unique that we have a leading woman who is in her 70s carrying this franchise at this point. She completely sells this movie. She carries it on her shoulders. She's one of the best parts in this movie. I am with her from square one after the prologue scene we get of her childhood. Because of what we learn in this prologue scene that starts the movie off showing her childhood and what she had to deal with in those years, I am with her character 100% through this whole movie. Because, yeah, sure, it helps that I've seen the other films and I liked her character there. But here, I really feel for her as she has to go back into her childhood home and relive all these past horrific memories. Yes, sure, there's a lot of shorthand in these moments. It's not like it reinvents that kind of story arc or anything. In the prologue scene, we see her father just sitting there watching TV, drinking beers. He's literally wearing a white beater. And yeah, it's pretty cliched in that way. But I still went with it enough. It didn't annoy me. It didn't stay around long enough for me to really find it to be a problem. I felt like, okay, they want to get this out quick. Explain, yes, she had a terrible childhood. She also had to deal with real demons. She had some traumatic experience when she was a kid that I won't reveal because in case you want to see this movie. But it still worked for me. Admittedly, when I look back to it from last year with Beverly's father and him being an abusive father to her, and that relationship, I do find that to be more effective and a lot more tense than the one we see here. But it still works for what it is. You still feel bad for her that she had to go through all this, yada, yada, yada. It still works for what the movie's trying to do. I was still engaged enough in that dynamic. They also do the cliche of she had a brother who we meet in the prologue and they reconnect, but he doesn't want anything to do with her, saying, oh, you left me with this jerk of a father, how could you do that to me? And he has a daughter who also meets her and wants to get to know her because she finds out she's psychic because, well, I'll get to Spence and Tucker, but those two need to shut up sometimes. Let me just say that. But I'll get to them in a little bit. So yeah, that's also a cliche of, oh, the relative who feels scorned because you abandon them and, you know, they're going to be bitter about it till the end of the movie when, of course, you know, they come around. Like, again, not a spoiler because you see that coming a mile away. That being said, because I like this character, I was able to go with it more than in a movie where I just didn't give a crap. Honestly, throughout this movie, I'll just say it now, I didn't find myself bored. I didn't find myself uninvested, really at all. And I credit that a lot to Lynch and to the director, Adam Rosenthal, who his previous work was a film called Taking of Deborah Logan, which is a found footage horror movie. I haven't actually seen it. I just read a little bit synopsis about it. From what I've heard, it's good. It's, you know, amongst horror fans, I hear every once in a while someone will bring it up and say, yeah, it's pretty good, check it out. It's one of those that's like on my list, but it's not like super high. I gotta commend this director because this director really took this film and he gave it a bit of sincerity, honestly, is what I feel like this film has. And I credit that, yes, to the cast as well, but it felt like they really tried. Like, they weren't just gonna, you know, have a half-assed sequel coming here and, oh, we just want to make a new Insidious film. It felt like they were putting in genuine effort. There aren't any false jump scares, which I always appreciate. They're all legitimate jump scares. There are a few times that actually got me. There are some creepy sequences. For example, there was one genuinely tense sequence in a sewer grate where Lin Shaye goes down into this little sewer area and she finds all these suitcases. And in the back of my head, yes, I did keep making the joke of Pennywise popping around the corner and being like, hey, Elise, you want a balloon? Yes, I know. And you have other sequences such as where she'll be in a room by herself that's completely pitch black except for a little bit of light, and the camera will just slowly turn and, oh, you'll see some shadowy figure standing in the background. Sure, that's a horror trick as old as at least Halloween, probably even farther, but I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but possibly even farther than Halloween. Yes, that's true, but I still found those eerie enough for me not to be annoyed that, oh, they're just doing the same cliche over and over again. It's like, that's the kind of stuff I expect to see in these kind of films, and I don't mind that I see them here when they're done well, when they are played in a way that feels right for the story, feels right for the scene, etc., etc., and here it did. It felt right for what they were doing. Also, this movie, without giving it away, has something that happens about halfway through the movie that changes the dynamic of what's going on. And I like that they did this thing without giving it away. Now, I've been mostly talking positive about this film, but one of the things I don't particularly like that much is Specs and Tucker. The characters themselves are fine, they're great assets, but sometimes their dialogue is cringy. When they try to make jokes or hit on young women and stuff, which is fine as part of their character, but it's like, couldn't you make it less awkward? And I get that it's like they're supposed to be awkward with their humor, but there's a fine line between awkward and awkward but funny. There's a very fine line there, and you want to make sure you're hitting awkward but it's funny. Like, because they're so awkward. Not just uncomfortable, okay, dude, can you get away from the nice woman there? Not that they're being pervy or anything, it just also wasn't that funny. It's just more like they're the awkward, really huge geeks that think they're hilarious, but they're really not, you know, and that's it. And they don't really do much more than that except for make awkward jokes. So, that's all they got going for them in this movie. Also, one thing that, while I was in the movie, I wasn't really thinking about, but it annoyed me upon reflecting about the movie, is that this house is right next to a prison. Elise's father, when she was a kid, was a prison guard at the prison, and they talk about how he would watch a bunch of people being executed there. And, of course, I don't know why this didn't occur to me during watching the film. I guess I was just more like, okay, what are they going to do in this movie? But, like, for some reason, this idea didn't occur to me during it. I don't know why, don't ask. I have no idea. But it did occur walking out of the theater. So, there is that. where they're talking about all these guys being executed in this prison, right? Now, afterwards, I'm thinking, wait a minute. Why didn't you go investigate the prison? Why was that never a thing in this movie? Where we would get some executed person coming back as a ghost. Maybe either being evil because they're like an executed convict or something. Or maybe trying to redeem their name or something. Like, nothing like that. Never once does that idea even come through. The closest thing we get to them going into the prison is in the further. For those who have seen the films, you know what I'm talking about. It's basically the other world in the Insidious movies. That's what it's called. The other side. When Elise does eventually go into the further in this film, there is a sequence where she ends up in a prison type area in the further. But that's about as close as we get to actually going into the prison and investigating the prison to see if there's ghosts there that might be some sort of a danger or something. Like, why not connect the two places? That seems so odd to set that up at the beginning of your film, that you are right next to a prison where they executed criminals, possibly murderers, and yet you never let that pay off? We don't even have, like, a spirit come back who was, like, one of those criminals or anything and telling Elise, like, I was executed wrongfully or something or other. Anything like that. So, they do basically nothing with the prison except for having it be sort of a motif. These demons of your past will imprison your mind and you'll be emotionally scarred and imprisoned by them until you are willing to let go and forgive. I guess that's the motif in this movie. Actually, no, it is the motif. That's the only real way that it works into the story, is by having that be a symbol. But being that it's a ghost movie, I don't know how the hell they didn't do that. Haunted prisons are a thing, supposedly. Like, there's a lot of reported haunted prisons just here in the United States alone. How the hell did you not take that opportunity and run with it? Overall, this film is adequate. It doesn't really reinvent the wheel of haunted house movies or anything, but it was fine, serviceable horror movie, a decent sequel to the other Insidious films. It didn't scare me. I really like haunted house movies. I find that ghosts and the idea of ghosts to be scary in film. There are several great ones that really creep me out. Both of the Conjuring movies are great examples of recent ghost horror movies, haunted house movies that have really scared me and unsettled me. Also, The Innkeepers. All those movies have just unsettled me and just made me feel a little uncomfortable, like being, home alone at night or whatever, after seeing them the first times. And this film definitely did not do that, but it still worked for me in the moment. I enjoyed it for the most part. Again, I really like the character of Elise. So I'm going to give this movie 3 stars. You know what, guys, in some ways this is a triumph, because usually the first movie in January is a horror movie, and it usually is horrible. So, considering this movie is just fine and adequate, that's actually a step up. So, you know what, I'll take it. And where would I rank it? I would say 3rd best in the series after the first and the third one. But that's it for my review of Insidious: The Last Key. If you like the Insidious films, you'll probably enjoy this one. And that's it for my review. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, and there will be some more reviews coming really soon. So be ready for them. And I'll see you later.